Thanks, everyone. We just want to make sure that we know who's here. If you have a moment, could you just type your name in the chat because we can see your names there and just let us know what program, because sometimes I see the names, but I don't know the programs, and it's a way for us to be engaged through this session, which is called Unlocking the Integrated Education and Training, or IET Design Toolkit. I'm Heather Turngren. I am a teacher with Minneapolis Adult Education, and I am also a consultant with or coordinator with Atlas, and I focus on adult career pathways. And my esteemed colleague is joining me here today. Kristine.
Esteemed colleague, indeed. I am Kristine Kelly. I am the Atlas Literacy Coordinator, and I've recently, in the last year and a half, become part of this team and part of this work, which has been very exciting. And of course, I get to work with my highly esteemed colleague, Heather. So welcome, everyone.
Thanks, Christina. I'm just noticing in the chat, we have folks all around Minnesota joining us today. So it's great to see names, but then also know where about in the state you are located. Christina and I have planned a very robust and jam-packed session for you today on the IET Design Toolkit. We hope that by the end of this webinar that you'll be able to identify the key components of the IET Design Toolkit, describe the 4 phases of the IET Design Toolkit. And what I really like from all sessions is locate resources to support the development of IETs.
So what is the value of offering IETs? And this was something that I asked right away when I started helping with this work, is what is the value? And some of the values that we've identified are it really gives students a sense of direction and moves them into sustainable wage employment. And IET can be part of a career pathway. It can accelerate a piece of that career pathway. It fulfills a need in our community for students, programs, and employers, and especially if you do, if there is a particular industry need in your community. That's why we talk about how important these partnerships are. And I think that in the last session that I was in, one of the really great benefits is you can design it so that perhaps students who potentially might not be able to score on a TABE test, for example, this was something with DOC Moose Lake, but could really get into an industry with the right supports in place that an IET would apply as far as the academic and those soft professional skills. You can tap into students who really could be successful, but potentially are being held back by something like a standardized test.
Yeah, Christine, we certainly don't want to do that with our learners. Christine started with some of the values, but there's other values in this type of delivery model. There's benefits to your program. And as you can see in the chat, we have programs from all over the state. What are those benefits? I'm not going to have you share in the chat right now just because of the time, but one benefit is that you are creating SSLOs. And Christine led that great session earlier on creating the SSLOs is a way that you can be providing the most useful teaching that you can for students in your classroom. We also know that SSLOs helps the program and you focus on the lessons for key vocabulary and workplace skills. So you're getting out what might be all the little details, but you're just going to that main idea for that industry or credential within that IET. IETs, we know through all of the research and data, helps with student persistence, retention, and level gains. So it's helping the students, as Christine was saying, but it's also helping your programming by keeping students in longer, retaining them so that they get that credential or that skill set. And really important for programming is the level gains. And we also learned from Brad and Julie earlier that programs using federal ABE funds for student training must be in an IET format.
And there are some great benefits to students. And one of the benefits is it really builds student confidence and familiarity with industry-specific terminology that they need to be successful in that pathway. The real-life situations promote language acquisition and retention. Contextualized instruction is such an incredibly effective way for students to gain skills. And that focus on the workplace skills gives a better idea what the job entails and is immediately relevant. The students can see the relevancy of what they're working on directly connected to that pathway. And it connects students to their employment goals and to careers that have family sustaining wages, which is really in my mind, one of the most important benefits to help our students transform.
Yes, and we also know that there's benefits to employers in the community. I think of IET as win, 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 win for programs, win for students, employers, and community. So what are some of those benefits? We know that the job seekers, who are our students, are more prepared for the workplace. They're going to be more successful in that job interview because they know the skill set that they have. Employers are able to showcase why they are a good place to work. If any of you were at the IET webinar from last week on April 22nd for the spring regional, Karen Jardine and Ron Fleischman did an amazing job on highlighting why employers want to work with us for these IETs, because they can show with the competition of finding an employee right now why they are the best place to work. It may help with our employers and our communities satisfy diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, as well as it may help fulfill those unemployment gaps or employment gaps, actually. And we hear a lot from employers right now. They just want to come in and grab our learners, but with this, they are able to get learners who are prepared for the workplace.
Okay, so we are going to talk briefly about the IET Design Toolkit, which is a great document that's been put together to really lead you through the steps of creating an effective IET. And the toolkit, it's meant as a team-based approach to developing these customized IETs. You want to address your learners' needs, you want to address the needs of your local businesses, and you can do this in 4 iterative phases that we're going to kind of break down a little bit today, researching and assessing, and then designing and planning based on that, developing and actually implementing the IET, and then taking time to evaluate and make improvements to just continue to help that IET evolve.
Yeah, Kristine, as you were saying that, Marisa put into the chat a link to the IET Design Toolkit, which is linked on the Atlas website. And there's also a PDF of the IET self-assessment that's inside the toolkit. Kristine and I are very fortunate to have a hard copy, printed copy. That's how I like to work. I'm a tree hugger, but I need some trees to support my my need to have it in my hand. So it's
I
really
need to
helpful.
be able to put Post-it notes everywhere.
Just like CCRS, right? Well, I was fortunate to be part of the IET Design Toolkit camp for those of us in Minnesota. There were a number of us who joined the IET Design Camp, and we learned all about IET Design Toolkit. We started with a self-assessment. We focused on the 4 phases, which you can see on the right of your screen. Again, as Kristine said, they are always iterative. You've got to go back and review. The toolkit contains downloadable tools for you to use and reflect upon as you do each of these phases. There's key questions for you to answer that are pertinent to each phase, and they highlight examples from around the United States with links to resources, curriculum. So much is at your fingertips with the IET Design Toolkit. Kristine and I are going to walk you through first what that toolkit looks like.
Yes, so very quick walkthrough so that you feel like you kind of have an idea of what's contained in the toolkit. And then we're going to actually have you do some activities to kind of do some of this thinking. So the table of contents, and I was fortunate, I did not do the design camp, but at COABE, I did do kind of an accelerated 8-hour train the trainer with the materials from the design camp. So I feel much more prepared for this work with the toolkit. So the table of contents, there's a brief introduction, and then there's a little bit of information about how to best use this toolkit. There's some, fundamentals of IET programming, a little bit about some programs in practice, guiding principles, and then it begins with a self-assessment. And we are going to be talking a little bit more about that self-assessment shortly.
And then the toolkit brings you to phase one, which is research and assess. And this is what you would be doing for planning pretty much for any course you offered, but it's really essential for IETs. It outlines the strategic process to assess your regional workforce development and adult learner needs. So we can't just focus on what our learners need, but also what does the community need. You're going to look for available resources. You can be guided to recognize key insights from what you learn and identify really important IET programming opportunities that will meet all of those needs. I think what you did in your session, Kristine, was great, laying out, wrapping around all those standards. This is part of it. You need to do a little bit of research and assessment before you get to that.
Why don't you go ahead and just talk about the table of contents? We'll do
Yeah.
everything.
Okay, so within the first phase, there's 3 steps. You're going to conduct your needs assessment. You're going to identify the key insights from your assessment, and then you're going to brainstorm and select an IET program opportunity. And again, all of this is not done alone in an ABE silo. You've got to be working with your partners. Why don't you let us know about phase 2 there, Kristine?
Yes, the design and plan phase. So this helps you really kind of distill what those goals are of your program, and everything else you need to actually create the IET program and create a learner experience that addresses those needs of the businesses in your community, and that is going to address the needs of the adult learners. So this section talks about some suggestions for forming your team and defining what the goals are going to be of the program, designing the program structure, and even in the session that I just did, and looking at IETs throughout the state as well as the country, there are different kinds of structures that are going to meet the needs of your community, your program, and your students. Design the experience that the learners will have, and then this is where you're going to create your evaluation plan that you will revisit.
Well, after phase 2, guess what? It's phase 3, which is, I think, the funnest part as a teacher. It's development and implementation of this IET. So you're going to select the integrated curricula. You're going to be building those contextualized instructional and training materials. You're just going to launch into your IET programming. And this is where you focus on creating and implementing the SSLOs, or that single set of learning objectives. The IET Toolkit walks you through the 4 steps in doing phase 3. You get started, you develop that IET curricula, you're going to develop the program materials, tools, procedures, and then you always have to think about collecting data. That is going to inform phase 4 of the IET design.
So finally, phase 4 is about evaluating and improving, which is something that I think we, as teachers, we do, as program administrators, we do. This is the idea of continuous improvement and adaptation to make sure that you are fitting the needs of the workforce and the learner. So preparing, as Heather was saying, gathering data, this part is about preparing for more formal evaluations. And of course, key to that, I'm sure I have not run an IET or been part of an IET, but I would think that the student feedback would be extremely important in this process. And then the IETs move back to phase one to look back and start again. And you might need to do some research and assessment to further kind of tweak and adhere to community needs, learner needs, and then move from there. So there is a section on analysis and reporting for program improvement, and then some different options for conducting some more rigorous evaluation. It seems like this toolkit should be 1,000 pages long, but it's actually very concise.
I would agree, and it's much smaller than the Adult Career Pathways Toolkit, which was much larger. And part of me thinks it's not just a binder that you want a toolkit you want to keep on a shelf. You want to make sure that you're using it. So the first part in that research and assess is for you to do a self-assessment. And the self-assessment allows you to reflect on your IET program development and also think about the strengthening efforts that you want to do for that IET. We are all at different areas of expertise with IETs. So you can do this assessment alone, but I recommend you try to pull in your key partners if you have established them already. Again, Marisa put into the chat a PDF of that self-assessment, and we are going to be using that self-assessment throughout the remaining time of our session today. It's also found on pages 11 and 12 of the IET Design Toolkit. I'm also going to make sure that you all have the link to a Google document that we are going to be sharing your key ideas and key takeaways. So we want you to be actively participating. So please click on that shared Google Doc, and we are going to walk you through some of the maybe more standout aspects of the IET Design Toolkit. You will also have access to this document after the webinar, where we are all sharing our ideas. So you ready, Kristine, to take it away with phase one?
I think so.
You got it.
Again, we're not going to go through every item on the self-assessment. We are going to be pulling ones out that we're going to be focusing on. So with research and assess, there are 3 steps to this, and there are tools that are provided to guide you through every step here. The first is to conduct a needs assessment. The second is to identify key insights then from your assessment. And then third, to brainstorm and then select an IET opportunity.
So from here, you could see if you opened up the PDF with the IET self-assessment, there are boxes. They don't have them numbered at all. And what I did is I enlarged what we would like us to all focus on today. So here it says, we make sure we understand which industries and businesses are hiring, provide employment that pays good wages, and are challenged to recruit the skilled workers needed to meet industry demand. Well, you could check that box, but we want you all to go a little bit further and talk maybe on ways that you have done this, or maybe ideas on how you want to do this. And then the next box you see, it says we take steps to understand our potential pool of adult learners and their needs. So maybe the people who are not currently attending your programs, but those potential learners that are out there that we know need our services. Oops, I went one too many. We also want to make sure that you take steps to understand the needs of businesses in our community and region who might hire graduates of our IET program. What good is it to give students all the skills and a credential, and then there's no one who's going to hire them? I think that's would be a failure on our part. So we want you to be thinking about these. And what I'd like to do is go to that Google Doc. Again, click in the chat on the link that Marisa shared with us, and we can see what you all are thinking about this. So I'm going to try to get us to this Google Doc. And you can see here, I see a number of anonymous animals in there. So right here are the statements that we just provided for you in the PowerPoint. right now we'd like to see if any of you are doing anything. Could you share some examples or ideas on how you are understanding which industries and businesses are hiring, or how you are looking to understand potential pool of adult learners, or maybe how you are taking steps to understand the businesses in your community or region? This is really a working document for all of you to learn from each other. We can't have in-person trainings and professional development at the moment. So this is the way that we would do it if we were in person. We'd have you walk around and talk to each other. We can't. So this is our next best thing. And I know you learned some really great examples and ideas, Kristine, when you were at CoLab, right? For some of these.
I did. We talked a lot about really assessing what the need was in the communities, because, and this is where that idea of partnership comes from, that there may be some things that you can offer with in-house people. I know there are some CNA, some parapro IETs. We heard earlier from International Institute, where a lot of the work really happened in-house. And that's great if it's addressing industry needs in the community. There are also going to be industry needs likely where the expertise really is going to need to lay with the industry experts, the partner, right? Because they're the ones who have that that particular knowledge. And so it's really going to depend on the needs in your areas to where you decide how you're going to actually design and who's going to be doing that work. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you for identifying where you're from. That's really helpful, because this document will be available after.
Yeah, and I just see so many great examples and ideas, like this one from Owatonna, working with the district-wide career navigator,
Great.
whose network, someone's already out there meeting those community businesses. You don't have to recreate that wheel. Perhaps in your school district, there is already someone doing that work. Thank you for sharing these great ideas.
I love surveying prospective high school students, seniors, to find out what are, the areas that they're interested. That's a great idea. Also, I see ASIO here. Yeah, connections. For those of us who are connected with school districts, food, nutrition, building and grounds. I know in Robbinsdale, there's a need for parapro training from the district. What a great partnership to form. That also meets the need of your district.
Yeah, and I enjoy that you are all sharing ideas. Kristine and I do not work in your areas. We know what might work where we are, but these great ideas can carry over to different districts. Oh, look at Faribault is doing a college and career prep academy, expanding potential pool of learners. I know Russ was excuse me, not Russ, it was Ron last week was talking about looking what businesses are hiring. It's like, just go around and look at who's got hire,
Yeah.
looking for someone to jump in, and they're hiring now signs. I
But
mean,
here's a great idea here I didn't even think of. Getting involved with your Perkins Tech Prep coordinators, because they are already doing some of this work and can help provide potentially a list of key areas. I did not know that. Thank you.
yeah, and connecting with your Chamber of Commerce. So a lot of really great ideas. As a teacher, I would say that our students are highly engaged, Kristine. Would you agree?
Yes.
Yeah, so we can move on from that first phase of the IET Design Toolkit, which again is researching and assessing. I'm going to try to get to my presentation mode if it will let me. There we go. And now we can think about what is in the toolkit actually for you. If you look in the toolkit, there's that guide for those 3 steps of phase 1. You get the IET self-assessment. There's strategies to engage both employers and other partners, key questions for you to ask. So if you don't know what questions to ask, there's policy briefs, asset mapping exercises that will help you with funding, because that's always key for so many of our managers or directors. There's links to case studies. And really, what's important for all of us is taking time to do reflection. So, thank you for sharing your contributions. Kristine, do you want to walk us through the self assessment for phase two
Yes,
areas?
absolutely. So design and plan. So there are 4 steps that are included here. Again, we're going to kind of really distill a few things that we want you to contribute to. And again, tools to guide you through forming that team and defining what the goals are, and considering how your program is going to structure this and what the learner experience is going to be, and then creating that initial IET evaluation plan.
I am sorry, my computer has a mind of its own today. There we go. I think it's connected now.
Today, my computer's had a mind of its own during the entire duration of COVID.
Okay.
So how do you make this happen? We are going to go back to the Google Doc, and we're going to look at some particular parts of this area of the self-assessment, as well as far as involving key partners, affecting or planning for that instructional delivery that supports what we wanted to support, and then also the transition plan for students so that we can help them once they're done with our programming to actually successfully move forward into the next step. So
With that,
I'm really making Heather go back and forth between the PowerPoint and the Google Doc.
it's fine. Okay. I have those skill sets, I think. So we're going to go back to this, and we need you to help us. What are your examples and ideas? I'll try to enlarge this. How's that looking for us?
There, that looks great.
Okay. So how are you going to involve key partners in the work of designing your IET program? I think in your session, Kristine, those presenters in the panel gave really great examples on how they involved those key partners, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And meetings. If you were there, meetings, and meetings. That was a key
So maybe
element.
just meetings. Yeah, but also I think it's that thoughtful planning for meetings, scheduling them in advance, making sure everyone's going to be at the table. Anything else that you all want to share in the Google Doc? How do you plan for effective instructional delivery that supports that idea of concurrent occupational and adult education content? So remember, it can't be 2 separate things. You can't just say, I'm going to get my GED first, and then I'm going to learn all about Parapro. It's got to be happening simultaneously. And share with us your ideas if you have a transition plan for students. We'd like to learn from you because we figure you all have the expertise for your particular programming needs.
Right. If you're thinking about your key partners, those might be local community colleges or technical schools, opportunities for apprenticing, your workforce development board or American Job Center reps, community-based organizations. So any of these key partners that you are bringing in to help design.
Okay, so I just thought I'd start it off being the anonymous, I think.
The Dumbo octopus.
That was not, I think I was the rhino, but.
Oh, I love being the Dumbo octopus and the blobfish. I love being the blobfish.
Oh, look at this idea that Dumbo octopus is putting down their job shadow. Work mentor. Oh, what great ideas for transitioning. Students could really get an idea, maybe of what skills they already have or what skills they might lack.
You can think about health and human services providers. Exit survey, absolutely.
Yeah, really great ideas.
I've been learning recently in one of my leadership courses for my doctorate, the idea of street level data. And that's really, getting down to that granular data often of the participants, the students in this case, because they are the clients.
Yeah.
COVID era virtual tours.
Yes, that's really important. We can't get out to all of the employers right now. Tours and class visits from local employers last week, Ron Fleischman down at Mankato was just saying, yeah, he took his classes out to tours, and it was a way for the students to see who was hiring out there and whether or not they would even want to work in that shop. This was for welding, just looking at around, and it's kind of like the students were doing their own interviewing by checking, like, I don't think I could work here. So it was a really insightful session.
I
So
love those.
thank you.
I love those tours to the for further education. I remember when we were still in person, a group of my students came back from a tour of North Hennepin Community College, and one of my students ran up to me, and she's a student from Togo, and she had this idea that college wasn't a place for her, and she ran up to me and she said, "I saw students who look like me, and they're in college," and it was so super powerful. So those pieces, that being part of a transition plan.
Yeah. And our anonymous dragon said, scheduled planning. It's basic but important. We want those basic ideas because they are so important.
Right. And some of that instructional delivery you might be thinking about, especially as we've made some, some gains in technology, is, how that instruction is going to be delivered, as far as, is it going to be a combination of virtual and in-person, synchronous and asynchronous, built around a learning platform, the different ways that students are going to learn that content.
Exactly. So I'll bring us back to our slideshow. Kristine, do you want to tell us what that toolkit has to offer for phase 2?
Yes. So there's some highlights here. Just again, lots of tips and strategies for forming that design team, whomever it is going to be, whether it's your workforce center, or it's going to be your local community or technical college, or whoever is providing those apprenticeships. Elements to help you support with defining what your IET is going to be, as far as what goals for learners, for program, for partner. There are links included that talk about some different types of instructional delivery. And there are some examples to some intake forms that are being used around the country, some issue briefs. So again, just a lot more information that you can kind of pick through and use as you need for this phase of designing your IET.
Yeah, and they're not just theoretical intake forms. They're ones that are currently in practice that people have used in other areas. So it is really accessible data and materials. Well, after phase 2 is phase 3, which is develop and implement. And there are the 4 steps. You're going to get started. You're going to develop that IET curricula, get your program materials, the tools, the procedures, and then implement the program and start collecting data. It's a lot in phase 3.
Mm-hmm.
So the IET self-assessment has a few statements. One says we collaborate with adult education and technical instructors and staff to create a single set of learning objectives prior to building our standards-based curricula. You could have been at that great session with Kristine just a while ago with the whole panel showing how that's happening. We develop contextualized instructional materials and plan our assessment strategies. Really important. What else does this assessment guide us through, Kristine?
It helps us to identify and actually incorporate evidence-based research and promising practices, as far as what we consider to be the more academic side, the reading, the writing, the mathematics, the English proficiency, and a data plan for data collection. So that and also how you're going to provide PD opportunities for staff. So it might be PD to help them learn how to better design contextualized instruction, for example. Or in the case, in the last several months, Patsy and I have been providing more SSLO coaching. And so what are some of those PD opportunities? I think we're going to go back to the Google Doc.
You got it. Here I am. And let's learn. Thank you all for being so engaged. So let's see what you all are going to put there. So how do you collaborate with adult education and your tech instructors to create those single set of learning objectives. Some of you might not have had experience. I think if we just go back to scheduled meetings, that might be the biggest takeaway from this whole session, is that you need to have those meetings. And then please share what sort of strategies you might have on developing those contextualized instructional materials and then planning your assessment strategies. So please share with us. I know in the past, Atlas has offered the course development and career-based, contextualized basic skills in instruction. So there's that sort of PD that can really help infuse your programming. Let's see what we've got. The anonymous elephant. ABE instructor can observe the tech. Yeah, that's a really great strategy. You can observe the tech classes. I know I'm not a tech teacher, but I'm a good observer. I can watch and see what sort of skills that I think the learners in my class might be missing.
And I think really key to these collaborations, you know, at COAB, I had an opportunity to talk with some folks from Metro North who have, who do a lot of really great work in partnership with their local community and technical colleges. And, you know, just, you know, you have partners because they have expertise in certain area, and you too have expertise. You have expertise in, you know, working with our adult learners, and, you know, the academic skills and the you know, the professional soft skills that students need. So the SSLOs, though they seem very complicated, they get easier when you do, you know, when you keep doing them. But, you know, really understanding what is that workplace competency, and then asking yourselves, you know, the part that we really excel at, which is, okay, what are the reading, writing, speaking and listening, language, English skills, or mathematical practices are students going to need to get to that point, or to truly understand and be able to demonstrate knowledge of that competency? And the ACEs TIF, what are the learning strategies students need, and how will they approach this work and set goals? And you know, I always say the CCRS is what students need to do, and the ACEs TIF is how they're going to do it. And so yeah, so I love this, you know, regular meetings with people, determining when the assessments will take place. Yes, asking employers, yeah, give us stuff, you know, like in my session before this, you know, going to the employers and saying, what, you know, what are they looking at? What are they needing to read? You know, what are they needing to fill out? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that session, also if you went to IET Basics, the 101 Basics, what Lynn Thompson did at International Institute, hey, I'm going right to that nursing home for the dietary aid.
Yep.
What is the form that your students, that the employers need? And then working from there. Can't get much more contextualized than that. So again, thank you for sharing your ideas. We'll move along. So inside the toolkit, guess what? There's a lot of materials and resources to help you with creating an SSLO. There's an SSLO template for IET planning. There's links to other states and their frameworks and examples that will help you create that SSLO. I always think it's better to create something when you have an example. There's links to existing curriculum for IETs, assessment strategies, digital literacy should be embedded. And there's also data collection tools and a list of procedures. So they have done a really great job in bringing links and materials from all around the US. Do you want to walk us through phase 4?
Yes, finally we have phase 4, our evaluate and improve phase. And again, this is the data analysis, and then how you're going to present your analysis to the stakeholders, and then considering options for even more rigorous evaluation. So a couple things that we pulled out from this section of the self-assessment tool, we engage in program evaluation and that process for continuous improvement. And there are formalized opportunities. So we have meetings that are just set aside for this purpose, that we have surveys that stakeholders take. We do focus groups so that we get a variety of different kinds of formal feedback that may be quantitative and qualitative.
Right. And this phase 4 doesn't have a lot within the self-assessment. So I'm just going to go back to our Google Doc and we're just going to ask for your ideas. I'm going to try to get us down here. What are your ideas on how you do current program evaluation or the process that you might have for continuous improvement? I recently had an observation as an instructional observation, and we all know teachers are not perfect. We can always be improving. We can always be better. So share ideas. And one thing I think, Kristine, I heard you say at the beginning was just about having those student surveys. What better way is to learn from the students? I know going through this IET design camp, it was recommended that perhaps reach out to students who went into that career or that employer and ask them, what did we miss? Was there anything that you feel that you didn't get in the class? And what sort of gaps can we reduce within what we're offering?
Right. And I think about, I see your survey at the end of each session. I think about, as part of this, it may be less formalized, but the power of, that formative assessment piece, within the instruction is having students get in the habit of reflecting and gathering information there specifically for tweaking the actual instruction, how that's working, and just kind of getting that real-time data throughout the however long your IET is. Love this. Asking students what gaps did they notice. Absolutely, that's great. And maybe even having them, maybe even having them back to talk to students, because they seem to listen so carefully to their peers in ways they don't listen to me.
Yeah, and I think also
That's
it's
great.
asking the employers, what gaps did we miss? Did everyone, were they all successful? Do you consider that they were ready for entry-level employment? And that's something to think about, that it's always entry level. They're not going to be the expert in that field yet. We're just trying to get them into that field. I like what someone added after that other one. After entering the job or taking the exam. Yeah.
And
Oh, great.
I love that, the student panel for future IETs, and also for future partners, right? And for your current partners, quantitative data is wonderful and we can share it in all kinds of visual ways. But boy, it's hard to get more powerful than students actually sharing the significant outcomes and the changes that the programming did for them and for their lives and for their families. I think that as a stakeholder or a potential future stakeholder, hearing those evaluation results directly from the mouths of students as well would be very persuasive.
Exactly. So thank you all again for sharing. I'll go back. I'm going back and forth, but I think that's our last time into our shared document. But please make sure you keep that document. Kristine's going to tell us what the toolkit has for you for phase 4.
Right, as we're getting wrapped up here. So there are strategies and steps on the types of data that you can gather. And again, there's information on both quantitative data and qualitative data and how you might interpret and kind of demonstrate both kinds of data. There are some links to data analyses and again, more examples from other institutions doing IETs or toolkits, and some ideas for presenting those results to stakeholders to continue, to keep those partnerships going and to also potentially bring on new partners.
Great. So that was a really quick run through the IET Design Toolkit. And we just want you to know that can be your guide for your IET journey, all right? And we might not be heading over towards where there's a war right now, where X marks the spot. But our journey can take us anywhere for IETs, right? So this is where we want to hear from you all. Can you share what phase or tool in that IET Design Toolkit may be the most useful for you? You can unmute or please share in the chat, however you feel most comfortable. I know we just did a whirlwind journey about that, but
And I think that one of the great challenges and also a frustration and an opportunity is really determining what your program design is going to be. I mean, even from consortia to consortia or region to region, I've talked to programs who are like, well, our IET for this, goes 8 weeks. And then the other one says, well, our IET on that exact topic is 16 weeks. And, they've got data that supports, why within their program and their community, they made those decisions. So sometimes it's nice to have the program models. And sometimes it's challenging to really create your own program model. But in the end, when you create something that works for your staffing, your community and needs, your students, it's going to be sustainable, much more sustainable.
Yeah. And
which phase?
Yeah, which phase? For me, going through the IET design camp, the first phase, it was like assessing and just doing that research, taking that self-assessment that really helped me, and it helped guide that IET journey.
And it may depend on your role. For me, the place I really want to dig in is that part of the SSLOs and, really getting down and looking at those authentic materials and creating the instruction. So I think your role as well.
Yeah, and someone put into the chat, Michelle says, good to think further about transition plans. Yeah, this can help you guide your transition programming and creating those plans. Thank you. Tracy says, in addition to the great work you are doing, Heather and Kristine, I really like the examples and ideas that have been generated. Thanks, Tracy, because they're not our ideas, they're your ideas.
And Heather, are you thinking, where might we put this document? Are you thinking of linking it on Mighty Networks?
If I'm able to do that, that would be great. Thanks for that good idea. I can share the document, but I want you all to keep the document for yourself too. But we can try to find something maybe as a PDF in resources, especially for those of you who have shared what you're doing. Thank you all for those suggestions.
We are really up to the
time there. So we want you to know that you have the IET, toolkit document that we used. You have the links to the toolkit. You should have that PDF of the self-assessment. And if you need more information about IETs, you can go to the drive-in movie, right? And
if you haven't seen our SSLO, mine and Patsy's presentation, Patsy used her love of metaphors to basically say creating SSLOs is like getting all the partners in a car and making a plan for how you're still going to be friends at the end of your road trip.
Yes, it's great. So there's a lot of information if you are new to IET or if you want to review IET. And with that, we're just going to say thank you all. The next session ends in just 5 minutes, I think, or it begins in 6 minutes.
Thank you so much for all your contributions and for continuing to help me, the newest member of the IET team, learn a lot more about IETs.
I don't know if you're the newest. You have done quite a lot, so thank you all.
Thanks for being here, everyone.